All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Correction Insider Series webinar. We're so glad you could join us today for the first installment of a three-part series on navigating probation and parole. Today's topic is intake and assessment. My name is Heather Doncaster, and I am the Chief of Planning, Research, and Reentry. I'll be the moderator for today's session. Planning, Research, and Reentry is a specialized unit in the Office of the Commissioner that oversees and coordinates prisoner reentry initiatives, leads the department's data collection and analysis efforts, facilitates strategic planning, oversees accreditation and compliance, and provides project and grant management for multi-bureau initiatives. Today's presenters are Probation and Parole Regional Manager Dave Johnson and Probation and Parole Supervisor Lauren Sullivan. We also have joining us Probation and Parole Director Melissa Kearney, who is going to introduce our presenters today. Missy?
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to take the time, I'm the statewide director of probation and parole, to introduce the two staff presenters today. First, we have Regional Manager Dave Johnson. He oversees Sussex County probation and parole offices, which include the Georgetown office, the Georgetown Administrative Office, and the Seaford office. So he manages the staff and the individuals who are supervised in those facilities. Dave is a graduate of the University of Delaware. He graduated in 1997 with a bachelor's degree in behavioral science. He started working for the state in 1998, became a member of the Department of Correction in December of 1999, where he supervised a level 2 domestic violence caseload and a level 3 task aftercare caseload. He was promoted to supervisor in 2010 and became the operations administrator in Sussex County in December of 2016. He was promoted to regional manager of Sussex County in February of 2021. He serves as the Sussex County DAX administrator, which is our internal system, and is a member of the Sussex County ACA accreditation committee. So he has a big responsibility with the southern portion of Delaware. Next, I'd like to introduce Lauren Sullivan. She is the supervisor of a specialized unit in the Cherry Lane office in Newcastle County. Lauren graduated from the University of Delaware as well with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 2007. She has worked in the corrections system for the past 16 years, first initially as a key counselor at the Howard R. Young Correctional Institute, and then she moved to a level 4 correctional counselor in 2010, and then transitioned to probation and parole in 2012. She was promoted to probation and parole supervisor in May of 2020. And from 2010 to 2020, she also taught the domestic violence batters intervention groups at Catholic Charities. So I'd like to turn it over to our excellent presenters. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So today's agenda will include information on initiating a probation supervision term, the assessment process, and the transition accountability plan. We'll also give information about ways to get involved and connected. And at the end, we'll have a period of Q&A. Please submit any questions that you have through the Q&A box on your Zoom screen. We ask that you use the Q&A box versus the chat box. It's easier to kind of keep track of questions that come in that way. I will select some questions at the end of the presentation to present to our presenters. Keep in mind we aren't able to answer questions about specific individuals or their experiences during the webinar, but we will provide contact information at the end. If you have questions about someone under DOC supervision. And due to the number of attendees, we may not be able to get to every question that is asked, but we'll respond to as many unanswered questions as possible after via email. Just keep in mind that if you ask your question anonymously and we aren't able to get to your question during the webinar, we won't be able to contact you with a response after the fact. The webinar will be recorded and will be posted to the department's YouTube channel within a couple of days. And we will provide the PowerPoint after the fact, and certificates of attendance for anyone who stays tuned for the entirety of the webinar. We also will conduct some polls during the webinar to keep things interactive. Keep in mind your answers for all of the polls are anonymous. And we will get started with our first poll because we'd like to get a sense of who is joining us today for the webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and launch up our first poll right now. Hopefully this is popping up on your screen. Question is, what stakeholder group best describes you? DOC employee, employee of another state agency, nonprofit employee or volunteer, community member, advocate, student, for-profit human service agency, legal, media, legislator, other. Lots of people are chiming in. I really appreciate it. We'll give another couple seconds for people to provide responses. Just keep in mind, you know, answers are anonymous, and I will share the results. Just give it a few more seconds. All right, and I will end the poll in 3, 2, 1. And then let's go ahead and share results. So we have a lot of DOC employees joining us today. We have a lot of other state agency employees with us, some folks from the nonprofit sector, some community members and advocates, some people from the legal community, and others. So, you know, we thank everyone for joining us. And it's great to always have different people coming out to learn more about the department. All right, so let me put this poll down. And so what you see now is the location of all the probation and parole district offices throughout the state. You can also find this information on our website at www.doc.delaware.gov. And I am going to turn it over in one more minute to Regional Manager Johnson to talk to us about navigating PNP. But before he talks to us about initiating supervision, I just want to launch one more poll real quick. Let's see. That talks about probation and parole intakes. So I'd like to get an idea of what the group thinks about how many people are assigned to probation and parole during the course of the year. So approximately how many people do you think were assigned to probation and parole supervision in 2023? 5,000, 8,000, 11,000, or 13,000? People are jumping in real quick. I appreciate it. All right, give it another few seconds and I'll close the poll. Any last minute votes in 3, 2, 1. And I will end the poll and share results. So we have the majority of people believe that approximately 11,000 people were assigned to probation and parole in 2023, with second place coming in with 8,000 people being assigned to probation and parole in 23. And the correct answer is actually 8,000 people. Approximately 8,000 people were assigned to probation and parole in 2023. I think at any given time we have around 11,000 people on probation and parole. So I think that may be where the majority guess for 11,000 people on probation and parole came in, but about 8,000 people get assigned to probation during 2023. So thanks everyone for participating. And I will turn it over now to Manager Johnson to talk to us about initiating probation supervision.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to jump right into this with initiating supervision. So in each county, we have an intake unit. In Newcastle County and Kent County, they are located in the courthouses. Here in Sussex County, the intake unit is located at our admin service building. I know you don't know what I'm pointing at, but out that window is our admin service building. Just a smaller building located right next to our main office. On the highway, it's about 5 to 10 minutes from the courthouse. So with initiating supervision, intake initiates the supervision of non-incarcerated probationers once they are sentenced by the court. For those individuals sentenced to a term of incarceration prior to their probation sentence starting, they are signed up to probation by one of our institutional release officers. These officers will go to the institution, James T. Vaughn, Howard R. Young, Sussex Correctional, or one of the level 4 facilities such as the VOP Center in Georgetown. They meet with the probationer prior to their release, and in essence, similar to intake, they will initiate supervision. So I think the next slide is the intake process. So once a probationer reports to intake, they'll complete an intake questionnaire. Essentially just captures the basic demographic information such as address, phone number, emergency contact information, etc. The intake worker will then review the sentence order and the intake questionnaire, and they will upload this into our computer system. The intake worker will then meet with the probationer, review the sentence order along with the standard conditions of supervision and all of the special conditions that were imposed by the sentencing authority. Some of the special conditions would be things like a no contact order, restitution payments if owed, substance abuse treatment, anger management treatment, maybe community service hours, any special or extra condition that the sentencing authority may have imposed. Once the conditions of supervision are reviewed, both the intake worker and probationer will sign and date the form, and a copy is provided to the probationer. In regards to institutional release, prior to going over to the facility, the institutional release officer will have already pre-uploaded the information into the computer system, and then when they go meet with the probationer at the institution, they'll have the paperwork with them, review it, and they'll sign it. At the end of the intake process, the intake worker will provide the probationer with reporting instructions, which would include the name of their assigned probation officer, address, phone number of the district office that they are assigned to, and instructions to contact their probation officer either by reporting or by calling within 72 hours of assignment. For those incarcerated, they would also be provided with the same reporting instructions, and they're to contact their officer within 72 hours after release. Next slide is how we determine officer assignment. So the probationer will be assigned to an officer based on the county that they reside. Regardless of what county or court the probationer was sentenced, they will be assigned to an officer in the county they reside. So once we establish the county, we can then break it down, the officer assignment down a little further based on the level 2, 3, level 4 home confinement, and break it down a little further based on maybe caseload specialization, domestic violence, if they're in mental health court, DUI court, sex offender, GPS, alcohol monitoring, maybe veterans court, any specialization that'll kind of narrow it down within the county. So someone sentenced to like level 2 mental health court that resides in Harrington, they will go to the Dover office. If someone is sentenced to level 3, no specialization, that maybe lives in Milford, what will determine where in Milford, the Kent County side, Sussex County side. If Sussex, they'll be assigned to a standard level 3 officer in Georgetown. In Sussex, we have a step further because with standard supervision, if you live on the west side of the county, you'll be assigned to Seaford. If you live on the east side of the county, you'll be assigned to Georgetown. And Newcastle County also has some parameters with determining officer assignment between the Cherry Lane office and the Harris Corner office. That's our intake process. So once you get your officer assignment, you'll be required to report, for your initial office visit within 72 hours. The supervision officer will re-review the conditions of supervision with the probationer and include all special conditions, answer any questions or address any concerns, hardships that the probationer might have. They will review the demographic information that was provided intake and make sure it's correct or make any changes if needed. Sometimes a probationer might report an address that they plan on residing prior to release from incarceration. And that changes when they're released. If it's within the same county, then in all likelihood, the officer's time will remain the same. If it's a new residence in a different county, the probationer would have to be reassigned. Also, during the initial office visit, the supervision officer will begin the process of making referrals. So if you have community service or any type of treatment, this is where the initial referral process would begin. That'll be addressed, I think, in the next webinar next month. So I won't really get into that. And as you see on the slide, it does reference review of the transition accountability plan, which Supervisor Sullivan will be covering shortly. And then other than that, the officer will be set up on a reporting schedule with the set up the probationer's reporting schedule, and so they'll know when to return next. And then finally, the initial home visit. So once we confirm the probationer's address during the initial office visit, the supervision officer has 30 days to conduct a home visit. And this is just simply to verify the residence exists and that the probationer does in fact live there. The probationer does not need to be home during the visit. A collateral with someone at the house to confirm the probationer lives there is sufficient. If no one's home, then we can just try again to verify the residence at a later date. Also, during the home visit, it gives the supervision officer an opportunity to kind of ensure and or monitor compliance. Again, if there's a no contact order with someone, we just have an opportunity to confirm that that person doesn't live there or isn't there at any given time. So just make the probationers complying with basic conditions of supervision. We can take it as an opportunity to kind of gauge the living situation, maybe identify some areas that we might be able to help in. And it's an opportunity to meet the family, meet those that live there, the wife and the kids. We can provide our contact information should they need to contact us. And it's a great opportunity for us to solicit any kind of support from them, from the family that lives there, that certainly wants their loved one to succeed, and to let them know that, you know, we are a resource, we are a service that they can utilize. We have that common goal of wanting the probationer to succeed, get off probation and move on. So I've always found that when I was a supervision officer, that was one of the things I did like, was getting to know the family, and speaking with them that they can understand that we're really there as a support system and to help. It was always something I found beneficial, but that right there is basically the intake process, getting signed up for probation, meeting your probation officer the first time, and moving forward through your supervision period.
Great, thank you so much, Manager Johnson. We are gonna move now into the assessment and classification process, and Supervisor Sullivan is gonna give us some information on that.
All individuals sentenced by the court to a period of level 2, 3, or home confinement are assessed within 45 days of assignment using a validated assessment tool. This keeps us in compliance with Delaware code, and the assessment also helps us to create an individualized plan to assist our clients in navigating probation and other areas of life. The main assessment we use is the LSR&R, which is an evidence-based assessment that focuses on an individual's recidivism risk and their rehabilitation, supervision, and programming needs. The 8 subject areas covered by the LSR&R are criminal behavior, drugs and alcohol, companions, family and marital relationships, education and employment, leisure and recreation activities, antisocial pattern, and pro-criminal attitude and orientation.
Okay, I think before we go to the next slide, we're gonna hop in and launch another poll. Let's see. So Supervisor Sullivan just told us about the most commonly administered assessment at probation and parole, which is the LSR&R. Do we have any idea? Oh, I haven't launched it yet. Here we go, launch. Approximately how many LSR&R assessments were administered by individuals, were administered on individuals on probation in 2023? All right, everybody's jumping in to respond. Thank you very much for participating. I'll just give it another couple of seconds. All right, and I will go ahead and end the poll now and share results. So the top two answers for how many Ellis R&R assessments were administered in 2023 were 6,500 and 8,800. And the actual answer is 3,800 Ellis R&R assessments. So you may be wondering, right, if we had, if there's 11,000 people on probation and 8,000 people new to probation in a calendar year, why 3,800 assessments? And Supervisor Sullivan's going to talk to us about some other assessments that are done on some specialized types of people under supervision, which is, going to give us some more information on why not everyone, which is my necklace, why not everyone gets an Ellis R&R. So 3,800 because not everyone gets an Ellis R&R, right? So people who are immediately sentenced to level 1 supervision are not, which is kind of like unsupervised probation, aren't getting an Ellis R&R. Supervisor Sullivan's going to talk about some different assessments that people might get. So they won't get Ellis R&Rs. So we'll talk a little bit more about the different assessments and why 3,800 would be the number. Flip your slide. There we go.
As Chief Doncaster stated, level 1 clients don't receive the Ellis R&R, so that takes a big chunk of our probationers off that. 2 other assessments that are used for specialized populations are the DVSIR, which is used for individuals convicted of domestic violence offenses, and the static 99R, which is used for individuals convicted of certain sexual offenses. Moving on, for after the assessment is completed, we will then start to develop a transition accountability plan, which is commonly referred to as the TAP. The TAP was adopted in 2021 as part of the Delaware Correctional Reentry Commission. The TAP is developed while someone is incarcerated if they were sentenced to a certain period of time. For males, it would be for 1 year or more, and females for 6 months or more. So before they are released to probation, they already have a TAP set up. And when they come to us at probation, we take that TAP and we can modify it and add different goals or remove other ones if they've been completed while they were serving their sentence. No matter if anyone was sentenced to a period of level 4 or 5 time or incarceration, everyone on probation, if they were sentenced to level 2, 3, or 4 home confinement, receive a transition accountability plan. And that is done with their officer. The initial TAP and any updated plans are reviewed with and signed by and provided to the person under supervision. The TAP is completed within the first 60 days of supervision and includes measurable criteria of expected behavior and accomplishments, a time schedule for achieving specific goals, and scheduled progress reviews. The TAP is developed by the officer by using information gathered from the assessment, by conversations with our clients, through observations and home visits, and also conversations and communication with our client support system if we meet them all in the community or if they call into us. Officers collaborate with clients to establish realistic goals and steps to achieve those goals. The TAP is signed and provided to our clients so that they have that in hand with the steps that they need to do and complete to achieve their goals. The TAP can be modified at any time as goals are achieved or as risks and needs change. Changes to the TAP are discussed between the officer and our clients. Areas considered when we are developing a TAP are court-ordered special conditions. Obviously, we need to achieve those for our clients to be able to complete their probation and satisfy the courts, education and employment, physical and behavioral health, family engagement, peers, mentors, and pro-social activities, referrals to treatment and services, housing, and day one, week one, 30-day plan. If there are needs identified through the assessment process that differ from the court order, officers will communicate with the courts and request any requests to add, modify, or remove special conditions. The day one, week one, 30-day plan is a great way to plan out the first month of probation, especially for someone who was recently released from incarceration. Someone may be released, they are looking at their court order, there's multiple special conditions. It can be intimidating and overwhelming to think about how they can complete all of them and get through probation. The TAP is used to prioritize these special conditions and other goals to make a realistic game plan to help our clients get through probation and achieve all of their goals. A quick example of how we may prioritize just special conditions off of a court order is someone may come into my office and be assigned to or court ordered to complete substance abuse evaluation, anger management, and parenting classes. I would have a conversation with my client and let them know that I have a treatment provider in-house here at probation that can do an evaluation for their substance abuse. I can schedule that to complete within that first 30 days of probation. I also understand that money may be tight for some people when they're starting probation. So I'm going to start, my next goal would be to complete the parenting classes. These classes are offered for free, and I can assist and give my client information on how to sign up for these classes. The last special condition ordered by the court that we're addressing would be the anger management. There is a cost associated with anger management. So their first step of achieving that goal may be to save up money to afford the classes before they sign up for them. This would lead us to possibly working on the goal of finding, maintaining stable employment prior to working on completing anger management. Once they find and maintain that employment, they can save up their money to afford the classes, then they can sign up and complete their anger management classes to satisfy all the court conditions. So it's completely understandable why that last court condition of anger management classes may be delayed a little bit. What I like about the TAP is that as someone completes their goals, they can see their own progress, which will hopefully motivate them to set long-term goals for after supervision.
All right, thank you so much, Supervisor Sullivan. So that ends the kind of presentation portion of our webinar. We're going to move on in a minute to answering some of your questions, but first we wanted to provide you with some information, email addresses for some different teams at DOC who could help you with some additional questions you might have. If you have information about specific questions for individuals in custody or under supervision, you can reach out to our community relations team and they can assist you or refer you. Please just keep in mind we can't release certain personal or health information on individuals without their permission. So if you're asking about a specific individual, the team may inquire about your relationship to that person, and we'll need to make sure that we have the appropriate releases on file. We also have the victim services email box up here for you, and phone numbers for the DOC victim services advocates in each county, and then the DOC reentry mailbox is also up here for your information. We also have, if you're interested in learning more about the department and how you or your organization can work with the department to support reentry success, we still have, we're kind of holding open the application process for the Spring Citizens Academy. The academy begins on April 15th. It will be held on Monday evenings from 6 to 8:30 in Dover. The application process was scheduled to close on March 25th, but we're going to hold it open for another few days. If you're interested in applying, you can find that information on our website again at doc.delaware.gov under the community relations section of the website, or you can contact our chief of communications and community relations, Jason Miller, for more information. We are also currently accepting applications for the DOC Youth Academy. Applications are due by May 10th for that program. Youth Academy is done in two sessions for younger kids, ages 10 through 11. Will be held July 22nd through the 26th. And then for the older kids, 14 to 17, July 29th through August 2nd. Applications for both of those academies can be found on, like I said, on the department's website under the community relations page. Additional information and videos from previous academies can be found on all of the department's socials. Department is also holding a correctional officer hiring event here at the Central Administration Building in Dover on April 2nd. From 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Walk-ins are welcome. You can get more information on that event at joindelawaredoc.com. There's also a phone number and an email address provided below. If you've ever had any interest in becoming a correctional officer, please join us on April 6th for that event. Or you can also look on the website for some information on qualifications and what all kind of goes on during the hiring events. That information is also available on our socials. And we also hope that you'll be able to join us for part 2 of the Navigating Probation and Parole series. During part 2, we're going to give more information on community referrals, which I think a lot of the questions that we're getting here today kind of touch on that. We'll try to answer some of them today, but I think that a lot of those questions, if you log in, if you join us for the April 18th webinar, you'll be able to get a lot of information on some of the questions that were being asked today, but we'll try to touch on them. So community referrals and evidence-based practices on the 18th at 12 o'clock. Keep an eye out for the registration announcements. If you're attending here, you'll be added to our listserv and you'll get that information, registration information via email. And you can also keep an eye out on our socials for registration information on those. All right. So we will now move on to the Q&A portion. We have quite a few questions kind of coming in right now. I think one of the ones that I think we can answer here, right? I've heard we said, all of us I think said at any given time, we said level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 home confinement, right? We throw those out like you know, that's commonplace language for all of us. Someone asked, what does that mean? So could you guys give some explanation as to what those numerical levels of supervision mean?
I can take this one. So the levels of supervision are syntax levels, and when a person goes to court, a judge will order a level of supervision. So level 1 is unsupervised probation. So generally those are lower level misdemeanor offenses where there's no specific reporting requirement. They are asked to report as needed, essentially. Level 2 is a standard supervision where generally there's monthly contacts. And level 3 is more intensive. So there are more conditions for a level 3 probationer that may involve, say, for example, a curfew. Level 4 is either work release or home confinement. It seems like judges are less and less putting people on home confinement because there are other options. I know we talked about special conditions imposed by the sentencing authority, and one of those tools that are now being utilized frequently is GPS supervision, and someone can be on any level of supervision and be on GPS monitoring. So the judges sentence a person to a SENTAC level. Level 5 is incarceration. So that's the highest level. A judge will sentence them to a period of level 5, so a period of incarceration suspended for probation. So probation is in lieu of serving a jail sentence, or it could be a person serves a period of level 5 and then gets out and has probation to follow. And that's kind of what we talked about with the intake, where for the most part, people don't serve a sentence. They are sentenced directly from court and go to our intake offices. But we do have those who serve a period of incarceration and then have probation to follow. So once they go through their initial supervision, within the first 45 days, the assessment is done, and that determines their level of supervision or how we supervise them. So it's based on their risk and their needs. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Director. Okay, so there's also a question. So for level 4 home confinement probationers, are landlines always required, or are there sometimes only under special conditions? If so, what conditions would those be?
Lauren, I don't know if you want to answer, but not everybody, sometimes the landline is required until a cell unit is acquired. But Lauren, I don't know if you want to speak more specifically on that.
Director Kearney is correct. Typically, there's a landline required. If we need to make adjustments, if it's not an option to have a landline, we can do a cell unit. As Director Kearney stated, home confinement is becoming less and less popular with judges, and we're leaning more towards GPS units, which are a little easier to deal with on the client side. But that would be a special condition imposed by the courts, yes. And for their 2 hours out, that goes on a case-by-case basis. As long as you're in compliance, we're going to be working with you. You know, we want you to have, your social time, your pro-social activities going on. So we'll work with anybody we can. And if there's a request made that their 2 hours be moved to a different time frame, we can accommodate that as long as we're in compliance and there's no issues going on with it.
And some of what we're going to talk about in the future Insider Series is graduated sanctions and graduated incentives. So if someone is doing well on, say, for example, home confinement, there can be adjustments made to their supervision based on pro-social behavior. So it's all about the individual and meeting them where they are in their compliance and in their needs.
And then there's a question about alcohol monitoring. Is alcohol monitoring considered a special condition, or is everyone monitored for this? So I think that that's kind of like a multi-part question. So I'm not sure if that's referring to an alcohol monitoring device or monitoring for alcohol via other kind of testing, but I guess you could probably answer both. So maybe start with the alcohol monitoring devices.
An alcohol monitoring device, I mean, if it's electronic alcohol monitoring device, then that would fall under what we call SoberLink 3. It is a device that they would have. That would be a special condition. If it's an electronic alcohol monitoring device imposed by the court, they would have to have that on them, similar to GPS. It's not strapped to their ankle, but they carry it with them, and they'd be required, similar to a breathalyzer, to blow, set at certain times. We can also do alcohol monitoring via urine screen testing. We have devices that test 72 hours back for alcohol monitoring. So if we set up a schedule of a Monday, Thursday reporting where they come in twice a week, it will kind of cover the week. A lot of the courts say DOC discretion. We can start them off with that. And if like the director said, in a graduated sanction kind of way, if they did drink, we could administratively put them onto the electronic one when we write to the court to let them know. So there's different types of it, but not everybody is supervised under that. It has to be imposed by the court that they're
Right,
not
so the
allowed to drink.
judge, yeah, the judge can order no alcohol, and then that's how we would have to monitor it. And they are also sometimes statutorily, like subsequent DUIs, they're statutorily required to be sober for a 90-day period of time. And then we use our tools, the 72-hour urine screen or the SoberLink 3, to make sure that they stay sober and they're in compliance with the court order.
And there was a follow-up question kind of about the landline process for home confinement units. And then the question is like, why are landlines required when fewer and fewer folks have those anymore? And I think that, I mean, I'll let you guys answer that, but I think that, you know, you're kind of moving towards those cellular units, right? In response to the move away from landlines, but
Yes, it's just how the technology works using landlines, and that's why we're trying to find alternative methods for it, using the GPS units instead.
Oh, I don't know what I just did. Hold on one second. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Do we see the PowerPoint still? Yeah, always some technology. So there's a question upon, and I guess I can just take this one myself. So upon release from incarceration, level 5 or level 4, is the individual always assigned to a community supervision level? So, so usually, right? So typically, right? So how kind of sentencing is set up in the state of Delaware is that what kind of judges are asked to do and how we're asked to kind of craft sentences is that things kind of flow down, right? So that people are kind of moved down from different levels so that they step by step kind of reintegrate back into society. So as a general rule, people will move from a higher level of supervision to a lower level of supervision. So most people will have probation supervision to follow a period at level 5 or a period at level 4. There are people who are released from level 5 or level 4 without any probation supervision, but I would say that those people are the exception rather than the rule. But it is possible to be released from a level 5 or level 4 period without any probation to follow, but that's not typical. So there's a question about pretrial services, and we didn't really kind of plan to talk about pretrial supervision in this webinar. And I believe that we talked about pretrial in previous probation and parole webinars. So I can kind of go back and look at the previous webinars and see if I can identify the one that we did talk about it, and we can provide the person who asked the question that webinar. But so, and I think that we do have two previous pretrial supervision supervisors on the webinar with us. So would one of you be able to just kind of provide like a quick like rundown of pretrial supervision and how it kind of differs from probation supervision?
The biggest difference with monitoring conditions for a pretrial would be we can only monitor and impose the conditions that are on the bail recommendations from the courts. So just like the alcohol testing, only if alcohol testing is ordered on the bail conditions can we test for alcohol. Same thing with drugs. Pretrial is for individuals who are not yet sentenced. And so they're not found guilty of anything yet, but the courts have deemed them appropriate to be monitored prior to their sentencing. So while they're awaiting trial, they still come in depending upon their risk level. They do have assessments done with them too. They're not as in-depth and lengthy assessments, but we have those to differentiate between high risk, low risk, and how often that they need to report in to see their pretrial officer. And we will go see them in the community and do home visits. So there's not too much of a difference between pretrial supervision and regular supervision. We're still interacting with our clients, but we can only impose what was ordered on those bail conditions instead of a set list of probation conditions that someone who was sentenced to probation would have.
The conditions for pretrial are less restrictive than those who are convicted. So that's the difference. They're not convicted versus they are convicted. We do have certain people who are on pretrial supervision and are under community probation supervision simultaneously. And then, you know, of course, they're held to the higher standard with the probation monitoring requirements for that. So they're not subject to search, obviously, because those who are only on pretrial supervision, because again, they're not yet convicted. So there are differences between someone who is on probation supervision versus somebody who is on pretrial supervision. And the assessment we use is kind of based on the DELPAT, which is what the courts use when they are doing their initial presentment and determining their risk of reoffending versus their, you know, risk of failing to show up for court.
All right, thank you. And then we have a couple of questions about how we assist in helping probationers obtain vital documents, such as birth certificates, state IDs, social security cards, to aid in the reentry process upon release or while they're on probation.
So we do have in-reach coordinators who are probation officers who are assigned to level 4 or 5 institutions who go into the facilities and they do workshops and they assist individuals with getting credential cards and helping set them up for when they are released. And the qualifications are if it's a male who's serving a year or more, or a female serving 6 months or more of level 5. The problem does come about when somebody is paroled without anticipation, who is exonerated, whose sentence is commuted, and we have no notice to help those individuals. And I've been in enough of these community events that I see that sometimes those are the people that are expressing their concerns about how they didn't get those services pending release. But the problem is we don't know about it until it's here and now. So that's a population that we probably need to work towards finding out a solution on how to help them with services. But we do have people who go into the facilities who help those who we know are being released. So that's the difference. The in-reach coordinators can serve as resources to people. So even if, you know, someone is sentenced to level 3 supervision and they are homeless, for example, we can still hook up with the in-reach coordinators who, again, are assigned to an institution, but they serve as a resource for all of probation and parole to help with, you know, housing vouchers or hook a person up with, you know, getting their social security card and that sort of thing. So we do work to help people with their needs. We're not just about enforcement. We're also about assisting them, the clients, where the client is.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're legislatively, we're legislatively obligated to work with the Department of Motor Vehicle and Vital Statistics to provide the Delaware personal credential cards to anyone who has been sentenced to or served 6 months or more at a level 5 or level 4 facility. So anyone who has kind of hit that threshold upon their release is going to be issued a Delaware personal credential card, and that card can be taken to Vital Statistics if you were born in the state of Delaware, and you can use that to obtain a copy of your birth certificate, and can be taken to DMV, and can be used to obtain a driver's license or a state identification card if you're able to kind of meet the other requirements that are set forth from the Department of Motor Vehicle for obtaining those documents. And then, Social Security cards are obviously provided at no cost, and we have an MOA with Social Security where we can apply for Social Security cards while you're in our custody, so that you can get those. We've kind of leveraged grant funding throughout the years to people the people who don't qualify under the legislation for the Delaware personal credential card, right? Because we're a unified system, right? So not everyone's hitting that threshold of sentence to or serving that 6-month mark. People who don't qualify under that threshold, we've leveraged grant funding to try to assist with the birth certificates and the identification cards, and we're out of grant funds right now to kind of to help subsidize any of those documents, and to subsidize any of emergency housing. So right now we're kind of leaning on our other partner agencies and community partners to help with that. So we do have the personal credential card set up, and when people, Director Kearney's right, when we have kind of these unexpected releases, sometimes some of the planning that otherwise would have taken place doesn't necessarily happen. I think that we have, kind of a decent system in place to kind of go back in and get that card if it didn't get printed, or what was supposed to happen didn't happen. I think we have a pretty good process in place with the in-reach coordinators and with the facilities to make sure we can go back and get that. But it does leave, there's a group of people that it just doesn't apply for. And we do have to lean on the community partners and other state agencies to assist with those people.
And I just want to say that we do have clothing closets. We have food pantries at all of our district offices. A lot of the programs that are court ordered and required occur in-house. And we have Delaware Center for Justice here, who helps with job search programs, who helps with case management services. So while the person is meeting with their probation officer, they can also meet with our service providers. We host groups for domestic violence. We have a contract with Brandywine Counseling. Yesterday we had Net Counseling. They have a mobile van out who come to our facilities and offer services for medically assisted treatment, admission to inpatient programs, outpatient programs, referral types. So we try to help everyone with their needs, whether they get it in the institution or whether they're out in the community, never served any time in jail, but still need some kind of programming. The officers are there to assist them with getting their life back on track.
Thank you. So there's a question that says, are the coordinators employed by DOC? So when we're talking the in-reach coordinators that we've been talking about, yes, they're probation and parole officers, so they are employed by DOC. You'll also hear people talk about the Vital Core reentry coaches, and those are people who are employed by our behavioral health contractor, who also provide reentry services to individuals in custody who have chronic care health needs or SUD needs. So our probation and parole in-reach coordinators and our behavioral health contracted provider reentry coaches, and then kind of our medical discharge workers work together to coordinate to provide reentry services for the folks leaving custody. There's another question about, do we know the percentage of individuals, I feel like this is turning into a reentry webinar all of a sudden, who are released without in-reach services. So, I can't provide you a percentage right from the, off the top of my head, but again, it goes back to Delaware's a unified state, right? So we are a state where everyone goes to the same facilities, right? So we have detentioners. So people who are held pending adjudication are in our system. We have people who are serving jail sentences, so right, less than a year. People who are serving prison sentences more than a year are all within the same facilities. We kind of have set the bar for reentry services as 6 months or more for women and a year or more for men to moderate or high risk, right? Because evidence tells us that you need to be, you should be focusing your attention on those who are at moderate to high risk for reoffense. And then we also provide, right, we have our contracted, medical and behavioral health provider also providing services to those who have higher risk medical and behavioral health needs. So those are the people that we're focusing on for some of these more intensive services. In a perfect world, we would be able to kind of, provide services to every person who needs it. But I feel like, we also want to keep in mind that research does tell us that we don't want to be over treating and over supervising and over programming low risk individuals because it can make it worse, right? So we want to be focusing on our moderate to high risk individuals. That's what we're doing here. So it is a little bit after 1, so we've kind of gone over. There are a couple questions that we did not get to. I tried to kind of loop some of the bigger questions together to make kind of some generalized questions. If we didn't get to your question and we're able to answer it, we will take them down. We will follow up after the fact with your question via email. I want to thank everyone for attending and for all of the questions. We really hope that you can join us. And I flipped my screen. Join us for the next webinar, which is going to be on April 18th, where again, we're going to talk more about these community referrals that I think everyone is really interested in, and about the evidence-based practices that probation and parole are utilizing in their supervision strategies. I would really appreciate it for those who are still on, if you could just go ahead and participate in our last poll that kind of, well, not kind of, it does rate the webinar today. Again, this is anonymous, so feel free to rate freely just how satisfied you are with today's webinar. Again, webinar is recorded. It will be available in the next couple of days on the department's YouTube channel, where you'll also be able to find all of the previous webinars that we have hosted. The PowerPoint will be available in the next couple of days, as well as a certificate of attendance for those who stayed on for the vast majority of the webinar. I want to thank Probation and Parole. I think Probation and Parole has holds the record for participating in the most webinars of any other part of our agency. So thank you, Director Kearney, for, I think Director Kearney may be the record holder for being a panelist on most webinars. Thank you, Supervisor Sullivan and Manager Johnson. I know that this is, until you're used to it, it's not the easiest thing to do. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you everyone who attended. I really appreciate all the great questions and the interaction, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I gotta find the end button.